Hello my dear darling people, how are you all doing? My name is Sanatan Pagare and thanks for tuning into Bright Myth. UFC 252 is right around the corner and I'm a massive UFC fan, so I thought it's time to put out a prediction video for the upcoming event. But before we go any further, let me just tell you a little about Bright Myth. Here at Bright Myth, we cover all kinds of different stuff like popular myths, scientific facts, we discuss the world economy, and of course, we cover the UFC. In our most recent episode, we talked about the Yeti, the abominable snowman, where we discussed all the possible explanations for the myth of the Yeti, and we discussed the several expeditions which were organized to find physical evidence of the abominable snowman over the years. So if you like such topics or if you like the UFC, please make sure to like the episode and share the episode. Also, please hit the subscribe button and turn on the bell icon for future content. And feel free to comment down below. And with that said, let's jump straight into the first fight on the main card, which is John Dodson vs Merab Dvalishvili at bantamweight. John Dodson is coming off a TKO win against Nathaniel Wood and Merab is on a 4-fight winning streak, all of which have come via unanimous decisions. Merab is also a -180 betting favorite over Dodson, who is a slight underdog at +160 coming into this fight. And I get that, Merab is the younger fighter fighting a veteran in Dodson. Merab has a reach advantage of 2 inches and he's also 3 inches taller than Dodson. So yeah, I agree with the odds, because this is one of those fights which could go either way. I mean, Dodson is one of those guys who with just 1 or 2 wins could once again be in the title picture. And I can see him winning in this fight. But I will go with the odd makers on this one. I think Merab Dvalishvili is going to win on points in this fight, but I can also see Dodson knocking Dvalishvili out. The next fight on the card is Junior Dos Santos vs Jairzinho Rozenstruik, and the odds were pretty close in this one too. Biggie Boy is a -155 favorite over Dos Santos, who is coming in as a slight underdog at +135. And yeah, I know that Rozenstruik has got that freakish power in his hands, but here I don't think so that Rozenstruik is going to beat JDS, because we saw how Overeem dominated Rozenstruik for 5 rounds, and I think JDS can very well do the same. But it also depends on if JDS doesn't make any silly mistakes like he did against the Predator Ngannou, because Biggie Boy will always have a puncher's chance in this fight, and if JDS makes even a single mistake and provides Rozenstruik the chance to land that bomb, I think then JDS will pay massively for it. But yeah, I think JDS has got this one. I think he beats Rozenstruik on points. Given the fact that this is a 3-round fight, I think JDS can dominate Biggie Boy for all 15 minutes of the fight. And that is not to say that Rozenstruik cannot do the same to JDS. The guy is experienced. He's got over 80 kickboxing fights, and I still think he's got a granite chin, although he's coming off a massive knockout loss against Ngannou. But I'm gonna go with JDS on this one. Now it's time to move on to the co-main event. Sean O'Malley vs Marlon Vera. 2 young guys fighting to make it into the top 10 of the bantamweight division. Sean O'Malley is also the biggest favorite on this card, coming in at -330 against a +240 underdog in Marlon Vera. And I think the odd makers did a pretty good job here as well, because as good as Sean O'Malley is, Marlon Vera is not bad either. And I think he's got a solid chance to win in this fight. And all of his 6 losses have come via unanimous decisions. And he's not one of those fighters who could get knocked out easily. But here too, I will go with the odd makers because O'Malley is just so good. I think he has a solid chance to become the next Conor McGregor for the sport. We have seen him go 3 rounds in the past and come out victorious. He packs one hell of a punch, and his last fight was not very long ago, and that shows how confident he is about his skills. I think he's going to win via knockout or TKO in the first or second round of the fight. The only thing that concerns me in this fight is that we have seen so many hype trains get derailed in the recent past, and I don't want that to happen in this fight. But I don't really think so that Sean O'Malley is a hype train. I think he's a real deal, and so I'm going to pick O'Malley to win over Marlon Vera via knockout or TKO. Now before we move on to the main event, I would like to tell you guys that this episode is also available on all the podcasting platforms, and that we do a weekly podcast on Sundays where we discuss all our recent episodes in detail with all the theories and stories that we come across during the research, and we end with a real-life paranormal experience story for our listeners. The links for the podcast are down in the description box, so please guys, if you could just use those links and follow us over there, it would really mean a lot. And with that said, Now it's time to jump into the main event of the evening, Stipe versus Cormier 3. In the main event of UFC 252, heavyweight champ Stipe Miocic defends his title against the all-time great Daniel Cormier in a rematch. Now let us first discuss what happened in the previous fight. DC got knocked out in the 4th round of the fight due to body strikes and head strikes, but he was winning till he lost. He won all the 3 rounds on the judges' scorecards. He dominated Stipe all throughout the fight until Stipe figured out how to find those openings for the body shots that he landed in the 4th round, pushing DC to the fence to end the fight. Now I think the same could happen in this fight too, but I just don't see it happening. All DC's got to do in this fight is not to repeat the same mistakes he made in the previous fight. Like, don't stand in front of Stipe and exchange with your guard down. He's Stipe Miocic, for God's sakes, the man who knocked out Werdum with a single punch moving backwards. Stipe's got good power in his hands and DC needs to respect that. I remember, I think it was between rounds 2 and 3 when DC asked his cornerman if he was losing the fight when he was winning. And his coaches urged him to keep his guard up. And I think that was because DC was getting hits on the head so many times. I know DC is a much better fighter than Stipe overall, and the only reason he lost the last fight was because of the mistakes he made throughout the fight, and that is not to take anything away from Stipe. I think he is in fact the most accomplished heavyweight champion of all time. I think his achievements outshines that of Cain Velasquez, who I think is the greatest UFC heavyweight of all time. But I'm gonna pick DC over Stipe to win this fight, because although Stipe beat DC, the fighter who dominated the fight was DC, not Stipe. Not a single second of the fight until the knockout happened, I was like, Stipe is outclassing DC. The only fighter who ever outclassed DC is John Jones. I think if DC fights a calculated fight and stays composed, I think he's got this one. So my pick is DC, and I think he's gonna beat Stipe on the scorecards. But that is my pick. I think Stipe knocking out DC is equally possible because we have already seen him do that. So those were my picks for this card. Please share who you guys have got in the comment section. And with that said, see you next time. Bye.